Welcome to the Straight Up, No Bullshit, The Dawn Handston Show. Our hosts are going to push the limits, but create an environment where it's safe to uncover the crap that holds you back so you can survive the mediocrity of today's life. And they'll be admitting and revealing their own experiences so you can learn the skills and attitude you need to be who you are. No bullshit. Warning to all listeners: if you have thin skin and get offended easily by harsh, direct, or somewhat offensive content and language, then this podcast may be overwhelming. However, we believe pulling your blinders off and viewing things from a real perspective may feel invigorating and may be the very thing that may cause you to expand your capabilities exponentially. Now here's your hosts, Dawn and Markus.
Straight Up, No Bullshit, your talk show podcast that cuts through all the noise, the bullshit, and gets down to the point. Don, how you going, my friend?
Everything's going great today. How about you guys?
Doing good, doing good. We have a very special guest joining us. Get ready to dive and delve into the fascinating world of astrology and in the healing arts as sit down with Starman Joseph Mina. I'm excited. I've known Joseph for quite a few years now. And he currently resides in the beautiful Western Cape of South Africa near Cape Town. But his journey has taken him all over the world, from living in Hawaii for 17 years to exploring different corners of the U.S., Australia, Japan, South Africa, England, Canada. And so Joseph has gained a lot of knowledge and experience through all those. One thing I learned in his background is that his background was in accounting. I didn't know that. We're going to have to talk about that. But his fascination with the celestial heavens led him to pursue a true passion. As a bodywork practitioner, teacher, counseling, astrologer, and facilitator of healing retreats, Joseph has dedicated his life to helping others on their healing journeys. So today we're going to explore how Joseph got started in the field, what drew him to astrology and the healing arts, and most intriguingly, his personal experience during the eclipse that we just had, and cover the secrets to maintaining an excellent mindset and optimal health during these stressful, crazy times. So Joseph, welcome, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I am just back from Southern Illinois, where I viewed the solar eclipse at Southern Illinois University campus. NASA did a big presentation there. It was amazing.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
My seventh eclipse.
Seventh eclipse.
Nice.
Seven's a lucky number.
Seven is a lucky number. Absolutely is. What did you glean any new insights from this eclipse, or how did it feel?
It was ecstatic, and the whole range of emotions. It was just amazing to watch the crowd around me. In the stadium, the roar, the jubilation, everything and anything. One insight that came to me was that our sun imbues all the planets, all the asteroids, everything in our solar system with its vibration. And because everything orbits the sun, everything has a shadow cone that extends out into space. And so that vibration not only fills the body with all the sun's vibration, but it also fills that shadow cone. And so when the moon's shadow cone starts sweeping across the earth during a total eclipse, we are literally inside that cone of vibration. And that's what brings up all the energy. And,
interesting.
And this particular eclipse was powerful just because of the astrological components of it. And in a Mercury retrograde, we are in a Mercury retrograde. And for those who listen to this who are not familiar with Mercury retrograde, that audience is getting smaller, by the way. Mercury is our planet of communication.
Okay.
As an aside, I just want to say this, that what we see on the outside is a reflection of what's on the inside. And so everything that we see in the night sky, for example, is time dated. That is, it's coming from different time zones. And because light has a certain limitation to its speed, 186,000 miles a second, everything is time sequenced. So our moon is 1.5 light seconds away. Our sun's 8 light minutes away. Pluto is 5 light hours away. It takes that long. So even though we're seeing everything in the moment, it's all time sequenced. So it's perhaps the greatest illusion of all.
Interesting.
And
what I noticed, Joseph, was when I saw the eclipse, and I think here, I'm near O'Hare Airport, that we got a 93% coverage. Well, at the 93% coverage, I noticed it went from warm, very warm, to, even though we had the same amount of sunlight on our skin, it felt as though the temperature dropped between 12 and 15 degrees, and there was a big shift in wind, where I went from being extremely warm to being cold with the same amount of sunlight. So can you
it definitely
explain that?
Well, the shadow itself is cutting off the heat from the sun, and the moon is it's extraordinary. The moon is about the same diameter as the sun visually. The sun is 400 times farther away than the moon, but they line up almost exactly. So when the moon and the Earth line up in what they call syzygy, that is when we have our eclipses. And it happens every 2-3 times a year that we have eclipses, but not very often that we have the total solar eclipses. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the fortunate ones. So yeah, there's a drop in temperature, there's a drop in vibration. In totality, it's dramatic because the sun is completely covered, and all we see is the corona of the sun just undulating through the sky. This one had some green to it. And because of the drop in the darkness of the shadow, the planets pop out. Venus came out in this one. Jupiter was out on the left. Mercury would have been out, but there was high cirrus clouds, so I think the wispy clouds covered Mercury. And it went on for a long time and a very short time.
Absolutely. I know I watched it myself. Got those glasses and watched it, and actually put the glass up to my cell phone and took some pictures, which actually was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And again, it was like 93%, but it was pretty amazing. So
I must say that if you're at, let's say, just outside of the main shadow, like it's a 99% eclipse.
Okay.
It's akin to kissing your cousin versus kissing a lover.
Right.
When you're in the shadow,
Gotcha.
It's a vastly different experience.
Mm-hmm. So talk about that experience. You said the jubilation, the kids were bouncing. What can you describe that experience, that vibration that you're seeing, into a picture that we can understand a little bit?
Sure. As you get near like 2-3 minutes away from totality, which they call C2 contact. C1 is when the moon first bites into the sun. You start to see a little bit. C2 is when that part of the moon actually touches the other side of the sun. Okay. And that continues until C3, when the other side, the right side of the moon, starts passing across that C2 point. And that's when the diamond ring happens and totality is over. So in this case, it was a 4-minute, 9-second interlude of this amazing sight. And because it was a longer eclipse, 2017, for example, was 2.5 minutes tops.
Okay.
There was more time for our eyes to dark adapt. So the phenomena was different. And also the corona of the sun was more vivid. And because we're at nearing solar maximum, next year's solar maximum, when the sun is at its maximum output, the corona was much brighter and more vivid than 2017. So the feeling as this energy is building into the field, the moon shadow is coming in and it's starting to get darker, and shadow bands start appearing on the ground, and little crescents of the sun appear also. And the excitement in the crowd of this moment in time that's coming is just like, the anticipation is just palpable. And then at totality, when totality begins, that's when it just like everything just gets released, and the whooping and the hollering and all. But then about a minute in, it gets really quiet, because everybody's just like, at that point, in awe. It's so surreal. It's not anything that we can see, normally and connect to. So when you're seeing this extraordinary thing in the sky, it just like sends people into awe. And
That's wild.
when we came out of totality, a brilliant diamond ring appeared. That's where the sunlight starts shining through the mountains of the moon. And that little spark, it just sets this diamond ring effect. The crowd just like went crazy again. And as the moon shadow continued moving off of the sun, the children, particularly the children, had so much energy, pent up energy, that they were just going wild. They were running around, rolling down rolling down the lawn, running onto the field. NASA, National Aeronautics Space Administration, did a great job. And they invited all the kids to come down onto the field and run around and carry these huge balls, like the models of the sun and the moon. And it was very joyful, very, very joyful.
That's cool. That's surreal. What you were kind of describing was when I was in the eye of the hurricane. I was in Hurricane George in Antigua, and that 30 minutes of being in the eye of the storm was just so peaceful and so surreal.
Yeah.
But yet you're surrounded by all this pent up energy that's around you. So that's the first thing that popped in my mind when you mentioned that. That's
cool. That's a good
that's pretty
analogy.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was very exciting for me. Most people there left shortly after totality was over. It's kind of like at the movies when the credits start rolling.
Right.
Sure. Everybody's like, but the show is still continuing, because all those progressions that took place up to C2 are now in reverse.
Right.
So you're still getting shadow bands, and you're still getting the crescents on the ground. The moon shadow is moving away to the left. So it was quite exciting, and pretty much along the path of totality, from Mexico all the way up into the maritime of Canada, people saw the eclipse. Although there were places like in Texas, for example, or in upstate New York near Niagara Falls, where nothing was seen. It was just the darkness of the clouds.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But most people saw it, and they estimated that there was something on the magnitude of 130 million people in this track of totality. That's extraordinary.
It is.
And because the moon was a little bit closer to the Earth than at 2017, the width of totality was wider than in 2017. 2017 might have been about 70 miles across, hence the shorter eclipse. But this was over 115 miles. And what I found really fascinating is that since 2017 and now, the lunar orbiter that orbits the moon has been taking pictures of all the mountain ranges so that they could update the profile of the moon, and in this way extrapolate it and determine exactly where the bands of totality were going to hit.
That's very cool.
So there are some people that actually go and stay on the edge of the shadow, because at the edge, it's a very short eclipse because only a small portion of the moon has to transit. But it's the flashbulb effect of the sun shining through all these moon cuts, and you see the corona. I saw this back in 1995 or 4 in Chile, in the Atacama Desert. We were right on the edge of it was a very short eclipse. Wow, it was like startling.
Nice. If I could switch up gears a little bit, Starman, could you tell us a little bit about your natural health care that you provide?
Sure. It's kind of combined with astrology. I was, as Markus was saying, I was an accountant for 20 years. And towards the end of that 20 years, I was just losing my appetite for it. I was good at it, but it wasn't fulfilling to me. And that's when I started my journey into the unknown. I started receiving body work, energy work. And anyone who has received energy work, it starts opening up the system, opening up our physiology, to forces that are beyond our thinking processes. And our mental attachments can be a big detriment to experiencing bigger things. That's why, like in an eclipse, you just surrender to it and let it work its magic rather than trying to figure it out or make sense of it. So as I went through this process, I found myself going, first of all, to the 1991 solar eclipse that crossed over Hawaii. That was my first eclipse experience. And then the following year, in an amazing flow of serendipity, I was back on the Big Island again, going, and I had signed up for a shamanic journey, 3-week shamanic journey, which the facilitator took us all around the island, and we received a lot of energy work, did yoga every morning. I experienced Kundalini, the Kundalini vibration that flows up the spine. I got downloaded. I went to the peaks of ecstasy and the depths of darkness, like a roller coaster over the course of 3 weeks. And so when I left there, I left Hawaii and came back to my home. A marriage that just wasn't working came to an end. And I started receiving extraordinary impressions in my dreams, like I was remembering an awareness of myself that existed in other lifetimes, who was actually practicing bodywork, energy work with people. So that really set me off because I had no training. It was just something that came to me and in my hands. My grandmother, my mom's mother, was very psychic. She used to read tea leaves, coffee grinds, all kinds of stuff. And she had this intuitive sense. And I feel like I'm connected into that lineage.
You know, Starman, I agree with you. I think we all have little different perspectives, but we're all capable of things that we didn't learn here in this life. We know things that we didn't learn here in this life. Right. And a lot of it has to do with connectivities with past lives, which, I know that's beyond the realm of most people's thinking. But it's funny how, like, once you start getting off the path of generalized thinking, you realize that the world and your capabilities and the things that you not only are capable of doing but receiving are way beyond the realities of the average folk. Would you agree with that?
Don, absolutely. Absolutely. It's takes us into the realm of the unknown.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
And there's this is an hallucination on my part. It came to me in a dream state that at any given moment we may be experiencing, I'll make a number up because I don't know what the number is, but let's say 50 lifetimes simultaneously. Some of those lifetimes are in what we know as the past, some in the future, some present moment, some on this planet, other planets, some in this dimension, other dimensions. The field of awareness is so vast that it cannot be cognitively grasped. I experienced that fullness, that awareness in my journey. Shortly after coming back from Hawaii, I went to Fairfield, Iowa to learn transcendental meditation. And I practiced the TM is where you have a mantra that's given to you in a rite of initiation. And then they ask you to recite the mantra over and over for 20 minutes, twice a day. So I did that every day. And it was beautiful. And I watched my mind get crazy and all the thoughts and all that. And we were encouraged to just be an observer of that. Well, there was one morning as I was doing that where all of a sudden I fell into what I would describe as nothingness, that I was experiencing everything and nothing simultaneously. And
I know exactly what you're talking about.
When I came out of that, I lost my desire to meditate. It was like, it's done. It served its purpose. And had a profound effect on me because it was part of this evolutionary growth I was going through in my own internal process as well as helping others. And it was then that I decided I was moving from Philadelphia, and I started this amazing journey that took me through Madison, Wisconsin, Asheville, North Carolina, Australia for a year and a half. I've been in South Africa, Hawaii, as you mentioned, Markus, on the big island of Hawaii for 17
Right.
years. So this journey has showed me so many things and has brought so many people into my life that has not only enriched me, but has enriched everybody around me too.
Well,
Right.
we like this podcast is designed for, right? And what I always say is it's about betterment. It's about spirituality. It's about physicality, the body function, the mind function, the spiritual function, all of these things. And once you start getting into that realm, right, you put that energy out, you bring in the energy that you put out there, and all of a sudden you start getting connected with all these wonderful human beings that think similarly, yet they have different perspectives. So everyone can throw a little
100%.
different spin,
Yep.
little different spin on the collective thought of people that have the idea of betterment. And so that was the whole theory behind this podcast. And we're so glad to have you as a guest today, because
Thank you.
these are the types of things that we like sharing with people, is your perception on astrology, your perception on natural health, your perception on thought and theta, like you're talking about. It's so all of our thoughts are so interconnected that like it's crazy. Would you agree?
Insanity is a good start.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to astrology for a moment, because a lot in the astronomy community have a tendency to put it down because it's woo-woo to them. But astrology and astronomy use the same canvas, that is the night sky, but for very different reasons. Mm-hmm. Where astronomy is all about the quest to prove universal laws and to develop new hypotheses and new perspectives, where in astrology it's all archetypal. It's the archetypal dance of how we move through life, how we experience life, the cycles, the cycles that transform us, the cycles that motivate us. All these different things are part of this collective awareness. And as you mentioned, Don, everybody has a different way of tasting it. It's a different sampling system. And it doesn't matter how somebody perceives something. The important thing is that they're perceiving it. And they eventually get themselves to this place of knowing that they know, as opposed to not knowing that they don't know.
You're hitting it on the head. I listen and I read vastly about different things. And today I was listening to some information on theta. And what I always say, before I even read this, is I say we're the creator of our own lives. We're the creator of what it is that happens to us and where we're at and everything else. Well, in this lecture that I listened to today, okay, they use exactly the same verbiage that you used. The architect. You are your own architect. And once you get to that point, you're at a certain point where there's no limitation where you can go.
No, there's not. And that's why I think today, especially, we see more people experimenting with things like psilocybin. It's amazing how the fungal network has become so profoundly noticeable that people are now opening themselves to taking a step beyond the veil and letting the fungal network, which is a huge part of our biology, reveal to us new insights. And I think the universe wants us to see something bigger. That's why the James Webb Telescope is out there now. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong with that telescope in getting it out to this point where it's stationary, and yet it went flawlessly, which is not quite our human experience.
It's not how it goes with technology.
It's not usually how it goes, but in this case it did. And so, and up to that point, scientists had this notion that James Webb was going to replace Hubble. And what they're finding is that all these different telescopes out there now can work in synchronicity with each other to create the entire spectrum of light rather than just the infrared or the ultraviolet or the visible. So we're seeing these extraordinary images now that are coming to us, and all those images are loaded with information. You know, light carries information. So whether you're looking at something through a telescope or visually in the sky or through pictures, there's information content in that imagery that is getting downloaded into our systems, whether we want it or not. I mean, it's like we jump into the soup, and whatever the soup is, the soup is.
We're basically a product of our environment, right? You know, like you said, what we surround ourselves with makes us who we are, right? Whether it's thought, whether it's people, whether it's organizations, it doesn't matter. And like you said, if the light actually has information in it, and that's part of your environment, it's going to penetrate within. So I completely agree with you, Starman.
It also speaks to the biome. The biome is the life force that surrounds this planet that allows life to grow in its myriad of ways. And we are part of that because our body comes from the very substances of this biome. So the biome is created by the earth to allow this extraordinary balance to take place. Like all the pieces of it, from the microbial life all the way up to the most massive of structures, they're all part of this biome. And where humans come into this mix is a challenge because we have the capacity to destroy this biome. And destroying this biome is literally shortening our existence on this planet, because the planet's changing its vibration. That's undeniable. Right. We see it. Everything's amplified. Climate systems, etc. The solar system is traveling through the galactic stream right now that is turbulent. You know, it was in 2017 that scientists, for the first time, were able to detect the gravitational waves. Maybe it was 2015, 2017. But like traveling through a lake that's turbulent, of course it's going to create this change of frequency. And with change in frequency comes higher vibration. And I think that that's pretty much what's going on now.
Absolutely. If you think about it, if the moon that circulates our planet brings the water, the tides in and out, and we're 70% water in our bodies, how could we not understand that celestial events and things going around us it isn't affecting us? Of course it's going to affect us in different ways. Yeah. And I'm always amazed at how attuned you are to those changes, you know, and how those things are going around. I mean, because we are all interconnected. It's almost like to say the universe is like the ocean and we're waves. Well, where does the wave begin and the ocean end, and vice versa? It's like we're all interconnected. And you know, you mentioned the microbiomes. We were at a functional medicine conference month before last, and there's a microbiologist who is looking at saving the planet through microbiomes, and he's doing it in a very unique way where they're creating this microbiome, these substances of microbiome that are being put on the grass, into lakes, into rivers, into pools, into soaps that you wash with, because as you wash, it's draining down into wherever the water is going to, whether it's the sewer or the septic system, and changing the microbiome to save it and eat up all the plastics and get rid of the poisons and the toxins that are so prolific in our environment today.
And they're created by humans.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
All the destruction out here has been created by humans. I mean, at the end of the day, like the universe, the world, it's all been created by our Creator, right? And it's all been taken care of, and it would take care of itself. But it's human destruction that destroys a lot here on Earth, and it's gonna have to go back in order to revive itself after we've done all the destruction that we've wound up doing. I don't want to get off on the tangent here, but it sounds like all the stuff that you're into, Starman, is energy flow through the body, energy from the light, energy from the air, energy. Basically sounds like that's your expertise. Is that accurate?
That's part of my expertise, absolutely. I also have this intuitive sense of seeing ahead.
Nice.
And some of the things I see ahead make me pause. Not because of we're on a path of destruction, make me pause just because of the enormity of it. It's like my body needs to like adapt and adjust to the frequency. And humans we're kind of a funny breed, you know. We usually are at our best when we're at our worst. I mean, people come together. I mean, even in the eclipse, in the total eclipse, the unifying field, I mean, there was no people fighting with each other. Everybody was in just like an exaltation about it. And so we are part of this grand mystery. And that grand mystery has so much to teach us. We may still be on the first page of that lesson. And
I agree with you. Like when we're at our worst, right? We're all seeking for something better, right? When we seek for something better, betterment, right? We're going to have to unify to correspond with each other so we can learn from each other and we can get ourselves to a better place. And that's why I'm a big advocate of our environment. Our environment, you constantly have to better your environment in order for you to get better. So I think when you said that people are at their best when they're at their worst, I think that's an accurate statement, because you need to get better. You're at the bottom of the lake and you got to go up for air. You have no choice. You got to get better.
There's also an understanding that the biome of the earth is transitory. I mean, you go back 63 million years and the biome that existed at that time, which allowed dinosaurs to roam the earth, massive beast, all of a sudden collapsed. Asteroid came in and took out 90% of the life. And there was a reorganization that took place on a planetary level where a whole new biome was created. And perhaps there's been multiple biomes created over time since then. And we are in the phases right now of a biome that is again going through an enormous transitory shift. There's a migration taking place of the poles on Earth. And there's no sense about when that flip will happen. But what we are seeing is that there's a weakening of the gravitational field, of the Earth's electromagnetic field, which amplifies any solar activity coming towards the Earth, because there's not as much protection as there usually has been. So that's a sign to me that the Earth is shifting its frequency. And the children that are being born now are being born in that vibrational shift. So they have a much easier process of adapting to these enormous changes than anyone who is older, who is born under a very different vibration. I mean, the vibration today, for example, is vastly different than the vibration in 1950, 1960. Vastly different.
Right.
And that's not that long. That's not a long period of time.
No, it's not. It's only, 60, 70 years.
So there's an acceleration taking place.
Exactly. So what do you think is going to happen when the electromagnetic changes, when it flips?
That's a big question. That we have nothing in our recorded historical annals that tell us this is what happens, because I think the last time the poles shifted was something on the 750,000 years ago.
Wow.
Which sounds like a lot, but in universal time, it's really not. In my transition from accounting into what I do now, I went to schools, elementary schools, and took them on solar system walks. So I had a model of the sun that was about like this, and then on these placards were little pieces of clay that was the relative size of all the planets. And every step we took away from the sun was equivalent to 10 million miles. And as 3 steps away, you're at Mercury, and the sun's starting to look a little smaller. 9 steps away, you get to the Earth, and you see the sun relative to pretty much the same size as we see in the sky. You would have to go like, oh gosh, almost a half a mile to get to Pluto.
Wow.
So by then, you could see just this little yellow speck. And yet all of that is held together by this gravitational field. So not only are we rotating in 24 hours, but also we are orbiting our sun at 66,000 miles an hour. And the sun is moving around the galaxy at about 500,000 miles an hour. It'll take 240 million years to make one revolution. And the galaxy itself is doing this revolving with other galaxies, and on it goes. So one of the parts about that I wanted to make real for children was taking what we know as a solar system creation, 4.5 billion years of recorded changes, and squeeze that down into a calendar year. And in doing so, every second on this 365-day calendar is equivalent to 150 years. That means if you lived to 75 years, you've been on the calendar for a half a second. The dinosaurs were on the calendar for 11 days. And if you track the emergence of humanity in Africa, let's say 4 million years ago, Homo sapien, that is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 31st of December. So it's a staggering amount of time to create everything that we see right now. And in that time, the Earth has gone through maybe 7, 8 major extinctions because it was ready to change its frequency into the next page. And we are on that, I think we're on that edge right now from everything I'm seeing and experiencing. And
interesting.
You can scientifically try to prove that, but I think that's a fool's journey.
Right.
So would you say that throughout all this time that we've actually progressed or digressed? Because I know the common thought is that we're so evolved, right? And I have a contrarian thought to that, because I think that things have gotten so much more convoluted and everything's a little bit more complex, right?
Yes.
Every year that goes on. And so are we truly, getting better? Like, or are we digressing? You understand my question.
I do. And there's growth in everything.
Okay.
And it's sometimes we have to go into the shadow and experience the darkness so that we can find the light.
Sure.
And you'll find that this universe is replete with paradox. Like we think we know something. Like just the other day, scientists are starting to realize that their understanding of dark matter is like way, way off base. And this is something that's been touted, just like, they're touting the Big Bang. I think that's ludicrous,
right,
that we think that there's just like one bang. And there might be a creative spark that is continuous, that is constantly creating and destroying, which is how creativity works. We destroy things so we can create things. And we are at a moment in time where there are over 8 billion of us. It was just 11 years ago, we were at 7 billion. So there's an acceleration taking place. Peter Russell was somebody I heard back in the mid-'80s. This was so enlightening for me. And you can find this on YouTube. He did a talk at a Toronto symposium about the global brain. And it was quite a prescient talk, because he literally was talking about the acceleration of the information age that was coming. And we were in the infancy at that point. And one of the things he said was that humanity perhaps at some point gets to this critical mass where all of a sudden there's this fusion takes place of the synaptic pathways of our mental thinking processes. And all of a sudden we see and perceive things as one awareness. And
interesting.
at that point, we may become noticeable to the sun. Because I see the sun as being quite sentient also. It's a fire being.
Right.
There was on the eclipse the other day, there was a sunspot right in the middle of the sun, little tiny dot. That was approximately the size of the Earth compared to the sun.
Wow.
It's almost like it was showing us, you're not that important. So enjoy the ride and grow from it and evolve from it, but don't go killing each other trying to think you're in control, because none of us are.
Well, I think that's where the destruction comes into play. I mean, I think that, we've progressed and we've digressed all at the same time. A lot of us are progressing. And I think the things that we're doing to better humanity and better the planet and different things in that nature, eating organically and, having conversations like this with like-minded individuals. But then there's a destruction that's going on with all of these powers that be that want to control it because they think they know better. They think they release a coronavirus because they want to wipe out because we have too much population. You can go through on and on and on, all the different things that go on. But in reality, it's almost like this tug of war that's going on. And it's almost like, is the planet going to survive through this tug of war, or is one side going to win over the other?
Well, when you say the planet is going to survive, you mean is humanity going to survive the planet?
Correct. That's what the planet's going to survive. Yeah, the planet will make it.
On a very local basis, the Earth has the last word. Regardless of circumstances, the Earth will always have the last word. And if it needs to throw a virus into the mix or amplify any aspect of its biome, it will do that. And then a little broader, the sun has the last word over the Earth. And in a bigger circle, the galaxy has the last word over the sun, because the sun has a finite life too. Everything has a beginning and an end. And that's the magic of the paradox, that in this beginning and the end, we have eternity.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's very profound.
I remember a Buddhist saying that sink not your mind into the unfathomable, because you'll surely drown. So I'm sharing with you some perspectives, but that's what I've experienced and seen. But I got it too when I was watching the people leave, like heading for the exits right after totality, and I was thinking, we're all connected. Some of us are very young at this, and some of us are very old at this, but it doesn't really matter, that we are all in this universal wave, and this universal wave knows exactly how to work this, and that we have the opportunity to reflect back to it, its majesty, its greatness. I think that's extraordinarily profound. And it's beyond religion, it's beyond dogma, it's beyond all this thought form that tries to make sense of it. Because in a bigger sense, we don't know. We don't know, and we're constantly coming to a greater awareness. And that goes back to my reference about the telescopes, that universal mysteries are now being presented to us that are so beyond anything we thought possible. The majesty, the color, the beauty, the archetype, the geometry, all of that.
So anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. Some of the words that I've spoken, I'm sure a lot of people say you're completely nuts. That's cool. Is no such thing as a miracle, because it's just something that happens that's beyond what people agree that is possible to happen. Yeah. And so on an energetic level, everything's going to change and everything's going to provide for itself. Like you said, humanity, then you got the earth, then you got the sun, and you got it's going to provide for itself what it needs through changing the energies. So it's very impactful with what you're saying about the gravitational pull, magnetic energy, all this stuff. But you have to understand that anything is possible, and you're capable of anything, and things can change on a dime.
Yes.
And so the minute that you think you're in control, you're not. Okay. The minute you think you know everything, you don't. Okay. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
They're all
And
paradoxes. Yeah.
it's just,
Yep.
it's so wide open. Just open up your mind and just get yourself capable and enjoy, like you say, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah. And grow from it, connect with it. Not everything's going to work anyone's way. Life is full of these ups and downs. Friends that I have now didn't exist in my world 20 years ago, and people that existed in my world 20 years ago are gone. They're not part of my reality today.
Right.
Well, to everything there's a season. Some people are there for just a paragraph. Some people are there for the first chapter. Some people are there for the entire book. So there's always a season to everything.
And let me just continue this because
Sure.
I think it's an important part that through our body we are genetically connected to the ancestry. That is, those that have come before us so all those memories are part of our physiology. And we literally heal parts of that physiology where those parts in the past have been wounded in some respect or another, that have been separated or divided or betrayed, whatever the challenge has been. And we, as a spiritual being, grow from that. We're experiencing that. We're not that, but we are experiencing that. And from that, our bodies grow and we grow along with it. So I think
Would you
it's
call that
important.
ancestry memory like cellular memory?
Yes.
Okay.
And keep in mind, it's not just in our body. Like there's aspects to our energetic field that are like a bubble, like bubbles around us, where the more out it goes, the more energy is required for that part to be active and working. So if you have a person that's suffering, for example, and they can barely walk, they're not going to have any energy to feel emotion. They're not going to have any energy to think about the things that we're talking about today. They're not going to have energy to connect into their soul essence. All they are going to do is deal with survival, very base, very fundamental. So the more energy that we can bring into our body, the more that we can access these outer fields and use that energy to further not only our specific growth and our path, but also our connection with others in this evolving thing that we call humanity.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
So that brings me to a good point. How do you think astrology and the healing arts can actually benefit individuals in their daily life? Like, how can they make it practical in their quest for betterment?
Well, as I mentioned about archetypes, each of the planetary positions has a theme. Mercury is about communication. Venus is about beauty. It's about self-esteem, insight. Mars is about action, creating things, starting things. Jupiter is about expansion. Saturn, the first planet that we see with consciously conceived rings, it's about structure. Uranus is like on its side, so it's like out of the blue. It's crazy. And Neptune is like the soul essence, and Pluto is about diving into the darkness, diving into the depths. So every person in their astrological makeup has all those components. And based on the time in which they live, those components are placed relative to each other in a chart. So you're kind of like looking at a map for life. Like when you combine, many people will say, I'm a Libra, thinking about their sun sign. But there's so much more in that experiential realm. It's all those other pieces, like a family of energy. And so what we see today in the astrological cycles is huge changes, huge cycles that are concurrently happening that haven't happened for thousands of years in such a concurrent way. So we're like on the tipping point of an enormous change.
I was going to say, do you think that's why we've seen so much change just in the last 100 years, 200 years?
No, I would say even in the last 10 years.
It picks up speed, right? Like energy
like
and
a
change.
snowball going down the mountain.
Yeah, and it picks up that momentum, and the momentum is what pushes it faster and more forceful. And we're at a point right now where that snowball's coming down the mountain, and guess what? It's not at the bottom of the mountain; it's at the top of the next mountain. So it's going to come down even. So it's going to pick up speed. It's like technology. It's like anything that we're dealing with. It's going faster and faster and faster. It's kind of like you said, Starman, about communication and it's about communication right now. We're in the information era right now. It's almost like you can't read fast enough because if you don't intake that information tomorrow, it's not going to be relevant.
That's right.
It's so interesting.
This is fascinating.
Absolutely.
And we are in such a mix right now of the realm of illusion. The planetary aspect of Neptune, which is about vision and in a bigger way, and the sea of oneness, moved into its home sign of Pisces back in 2011. And that was the first time that Neptune had been in Pisces in 160 years or so. Last time Neptune was in Pisces was the birth of the nursing that took place.
Wow.
So there's a compassionate aspect to this. And it triggers imagery. It triggers movies, for example. It triggers religion, spirituality, and it also triggers vision, like seeing something bigger. And all of these things are getting amplified. So as a transit takes place through a sign, the more it goes into the sign, the more intense its expression. And when it's transiting its own sign, that is a ruling sign, it takes it into an even more exponential level. One thing that occurs to me too is that the younger generations today are much more receptive to this kind of information than people that are much older.
Sure.
And that doesn't say that people that are older don't tap into this, but generationally, younger generations today say, of course, because they were born in this vibration, they know this vibration, but they just haven't been able to make sense of it because they're not getting information shared with them that is not only grounded, but also speaks to their heart. So it's kind of like you walk into a candy store and you got all this candy around you, you don't know where to go. It's good that younger generations can be shown a different way, a different process, so that they can dedicate their own lives to the seeker energy of finding within themselves their truth, rather than relying on things that are about the book or a doctrine, religion, and all that. We're at a time where we're coming into this shift, this Aquarian shift, where it's about the group energy rather than the individual. It's the collective, not the individual. Because that's how we're going to function on this planet, collectively, rather than as individual islands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Do you think that is, what you're describing there to me is an awakening, but yet we've got this thing going on with the younger culture, this whole wokeism, and it's almost like an agenda and a dogma that's been going on, and almost feels like it's being pushed on people. And can you speak to that a little bit, and how
Sure
is one more accurate than the other? Is one more adulterated because it's been suppressed or pushed down or pushed out on forcibly, that sort of thing?
Yeah. That term that you used, wokeism, is pejorative. Like it was created to demean something.
Right.
Because awakening is part of the word woke, right? And awakening means opening oneself to higher possibilities.
Right. And
the only way you can change something is by experiencing it. We cannot change anything we haven't experienced. It's all intellectual at that point. But actually allowing yourself to experience life so that it can shape your psyche in a way that makes much more sense is, to me, a stage of awakening. So all these political noise terms are demeaning and deflating because they're not about life. They're not about growth. They're about control and going back to the way things were, impossible, But going back to the way things were, that's a good formula for insanity, by the way, instead of embracing something new. And so when it comes to our diets, when it comes to the diets of the food we eat or the content that we take in, it's good that it's more of an energy rich level, because that's what's expansive. That's what speaks to our hearts, our heart desire for something that's better, something that's more human, more connected than something that's more controlling and deflating. Yeah, we can go dark. There's no doubt about it. We can go dark. We're really good at that. But the question is, can we expand our field in such a way that we start attuning to each other and training to each other rather than fighting with each other?
I love your viewpoint, because there's always different perspectives to see the same thing. And I like your analogy when you talked about people wanting it to go back to how it was rather than seeking for something new. And it's kind of funny, because I had this conversation with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about, and this has nothing to do with our conversation, but we were talking about how artificial intelligence is going to change things. And I was saying, and so a lot of people say, oh, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And I said, I listen to reggae music, okay? And one of Bob Marley's songs, it says, when one door closes, many open. Well, it's so true, because the people that don't want to not have a clerk at the supermarket, right? Because it's going to take away from their job or whatever. Well, maybe that job goes away, but maybe the people that service the kiosk or whatever, there's so many other opportunities, and they're probably better paying opportunities. They're probably more demanding mentally. People are going to have to learn. People are going to have to expand a little bit to get there. So my point being is that you're absolutely right because I think we're all creatures of habit, right? And we have good memories of how things were, rather than opening up to what's new. And so you're spot on with your observation.
The past is past. Right? And if it were
Yeah.
meant to be the present, it would be that way, but it's not. And so whenever we're going through transitional changes, chaos has got to be part of the equation. Mm-hmm. And chaos is a system of organization that we don't understand. You know, we think of it as being unruly and not being able to make sense, but it's like moving energy into different frequencies that are more important to our psyche than anything we can possibly imagine. When little children are born, even when they're in utero, they ought to be receiving energy work to prepare them for this vibration. And instead, when a child's born, the first thing that happens is that vaccinations start taking place. Right. And my disagreement with vaccines is not because of their effectiveness. It's more because in our biome, in our Earth biome, there is not one natural example of a vaccine. So why would we think interjecting that into the existing biome is a good idea? Because the tendency for a virus is to house clean. It's an important part of our physiology structure. If we didn't have viruses in our body, we would not live. So if we're destroying our biome, of course the biome is going to respond and react in whatever way to rebalance itself, even if it means the death of millions of people. Because the Earth is going to move on. It doesn't really care whether we are successful at this or not.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's really up to us as a human race to promote growth, to promote life, to promote things that are expansive. And you look at the farming practices on the planet, there's so much poison that's put into the biome to stop the very diversity that this biome thrives on. the biome is not made for monocropping. It's made for diversity.
Regenerative farming. I mean, that's why that's getting a comeback, because that's the only way to. It's even beyond organic. It's regenerating the earth
biodynamic.
as your product.
100%.
Exactly, biodynamic. Yeah.
So we have created quite a mess in this biome, and it's incumbent upon us, in concert with universal awareness, to start shifting it back into its natural state, its primal natural state that is designed to allow the flow of energy rather than to impede it. And and the medical model today is a disaster. When we see it falling apart, the cost is so prohibitive. The prescription drugs are ridiculously priced, and it's basically about stopping things rather than expanding things. And you're not going to have growth if you're stopping things, if you're cutting things out, if you're removing things. But if you reorganize the field into something that's more expansive, then it gives you so much more bandwidth to function and to thrive with each other on this planet and co-create and collaborate rather than fight over table scraps.
Yeah.
And we have to stop fighting over table scraps. This disparity of wealth on the planet, where we have a very, very tiny portion of the population controlling an enormous amount of the wealth energy, is insane, because that's so bound up. All that energy is bound up, and it's not being used creatively for the greater good of humanity.
Well, plus it also spawns into control and power, which is another part of the issue. I always say that those are the nasty three. You've got people that why do they want to control things? Why are they doing what they're doing? For power, money, and control.
Yep.
So it's interesting you say that. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about the vaccines, because I believe that wholeheartedly. And so my daughter, I mean, she didn't even cry the very first 30 minutes she was born. I held her, because it was so surreal. And we chose not to do vaccines. We chose to do a natural childbirth because we wanted her to experience life going the way it should be gone. The way we were designed to be done. And so there's a lot to be said for that. There really is.
And it pains me to see little children who are being plied with prescription drugs because their behavior is so crazy. But food is like driving that behavior. Processed food, concoctions.
And the vaccines, the processed food, the GMOs, all of that. The glyphosates, all of it.
What's interesting, I saw a meme the other day, and it's so true, and it said, the longer the shelf life, the shorter yours, okay? And it goes back to everything you're talking about, everything that everybody talks about that's got a brain between their ears. And it's destroying, right? You use the word biome, I like it. It's destruction of the natural part of food, of soil, of air, of you name it, through basically buying these products to make a shelf life for food, right? So if it's and the more I'm learning about food, the more I realize if it's on the shelf and it's packaged, it's probably something you shouldn't put in your body, because it's made to sit on the shelf for quite a while. If you buy something and it's going to go bad if you don't eat it, okay, that's probably good for you. And it kind of goes back to the old school way of, remember, you'd buy your food and you'd bring it home and you'd make it for your family that night.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now people buy food and a month later they're eating it.
That's right.
So it's the same thing: soil, food, prescription drug, vaccine, you name it. All of these things that are designed in a manufacturing plant go against energy, health, go against everything that it is to actually sustain a healthy and wonderful life.
The good news, Don, is that there are more and more people that are waking up. And one of the things that I compare that to is the amoeba cell, a single cell organism. It moves by extending just a small part of itself. It stretches until there's a critical tension, and then that critical tension is released and the entire part moves. So it's such a reflection of how humanity evolves that there's a small section that says enough. that there's got to be something better. There has to be something more expansive. And they start moving in that direction while the bulk of humanity just sits there trying to keep that little piece from going too far astray. And yet critical tension is what it is, and something has to break in that critical tension. And when it does, energy is released and everything moves. And I think we're building now in this critical tension that's getting ready to move something bigger.
And I agree with you. I have a friend that told me, and I completely agree. And Markus, we've talked about this as well. Is by raising your consciousness, okay, by raising the energy that you're putting out into the universe, okay, has the ability to change millions, okay.
Yes.
And it's not about you, my lips to your ears, or me in front of you, but it's the energy that you put out that can potentially change a lot of people. Exactly like the analogy that you just gave with the amoeba. It just takes a small amount of energy to change a large amount of energy.
It's the paradox of less being more.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love practicing. I love sharing energy work with young kids, be they 6, 7, 8 years old, even their teenage years, because their bodies are so receptive to moving energy. They're born for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, life feels lighter to them and not as hopeless. And all of a sudden they start connecting into their gifts. Every one of us has a unique gift to share with each other. Everybody's different in that respect. It's such a miracle that we're all together, and yet we each have unique gifts. And so when children start discovering their gift, their passion, and they start putting their energy into that, everything opens up in the field. And that requires cooperation and guidance by the parents. So it's just as incumbent for parents to receive as it is for children to receive. I mean, we're all in this together in that respect. And even the animals, the animals are showing us in magical ways how connected we all are. While I was in Hawaii, and for a good part of 13, 14 years, almost every day I swam with pods of dolphins, wild dolphins in the bays.
That's amazing.
And the downloads that come from these sentient cetaceans is just profound. And has certainly shaped a lot of the things that I do and the insights that I have and the people that I meet and connect with. And it's a hoot. It's really a hoot, when I step back and think of the magic that just keeps presenting itself over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't hesitate to talk to people that I always connect with people when I was at the Eclipse event. I went around to the different vendor booths talking to the different vendors about what they were doing, why they were creating it. And it was enlightening. And I could see the light inside of them. Like they feel appreciated, they feel seen. Yeah. And that's our greatest gift to each other, that we can see each other.
Well, I agree with you. And what me and Markus talk about a lot is the gift of enlightenment, right? So if an inspiration of thought. So if we can talk a little bit on a different level, could be a higher level or just a different perspective level on different topics, okay? It's not that we necessarily want people to agree with us.
Right.
It's just that we want to inspire a different thought process, because typically people all want to think on the same level. They all want to agree on something, and this is how it is, and that's it. So if we say something that's different, that's contrary to common belief, okay, we're not mad if people don't agree with us, but what our ultimate goal is for people to inspire thought. And when you start creating your own thought, okay, at a different level than everyone else, guess what? You get a different level. You get better, you get more, you get what you want. You, like you say, you're the architect of your own life, your own existence. And
never underestimate the power of something small. I think it was Yogananda, the great Indian mystic, who said, If you want to understand the power of something small, sleep in a room with a mosquito.
Yeah.
It's true.
And if you take a pebble and just drop it in a pond, the rippling effect across that entire pond is profound, just from that little tiny pebble.
Mm-hmm.
So vibration carries, and with it carries information, and it stimulates thought. And we are at our greatest when we are able to collaborate in that thought for the greater good of humanity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%.
So Joseph, could I ask you to do a reading for us?
It's funny. Just as you're saying that, I'm reaching for the cards.
Your Voyager cards? Awesome.
Yeah. What I like about these cards were created by a man, his name is James Wanless, doctorate. He has studied many, many versions of the Tarot. The Tarot is an oracle that has evolved over a long period of time. It's one of those star-seeded events that help us go into deep places. And these particular ones were created at the harmonic convergence. I'll show this. This is the electron microscope picture of the DNA. So it's two-dimensional, but if you can imagine in a three-dimensional, it spirals. And scientists look at DNA and say, well, we're using probably about 15% of it, and the rest is junk DNA. And I look at this geometry and I say, I'm having a hard time seeing the junk.
Yeah.
I may not be able to utilize all this yet, but I'm having a hard time about the junk part because the geometry is just exquisite. So each of these cards are archetypal, and there's, this is a good one. This is the learner card. There we go.
Okay.
There it is. This is the child of wonder that sees, that has a vivid imagination, that wants to learn, that wants to discover, that wants to seek in ways that haven't been sought before. So I'm going to shuffle these. Just tell me when to stop, either of you, it doesn't matter. And I'll pick a few cards that will underscore what we're doing today.
Go ahead and stop.
So this is not predictive, but it's energetic. It points to possibilities. And as long as we're in possibility realm, the sky's the limit. Because we have many, many options. And when we anchor something down, then the possibilities stop.
Right.
So our magic of being together today, this is the Rejoicer card. This is the Woman of Cups. I refer to this as like the double orgasm card. This woman is in pure joy. I mean, this was the eclipse the other day after totality concluded. Right. The joy was like extraordinary. So finding our inner joy, but when we're born, you mentioned it about your daughter, there's grace in that. There's joy. Children seeing all kinds of colors and auric fields and things like that because they haven't been brought down into this density yet. And so this is the door that the Rejoicer card is opening for us. And this card is the Magician. So this reminds me of something I was going to say earlier. Joseph Campbell, this amazing anthropologist, amazing. He studies cultures all over the world, passed away in the 80s. He did a documentary series with Bill Moyer back in the 80s on PBS and talked all about the archetypes and how cultures connect, even though they're great distances apart. And one thing he said is that one of our main archetypes is the hero and the villain. Every hero needs a villain and every villain needs a hero. And we see that in all our movies. The good guy wins at the end. The good guy gets plunged into the darkness, all that. He said, we're coming to the end of that. And what's coming in its place is the archetype of the magician. That is, we're here to create magic in this realm, this heaven on earth, rather than fight each other and find some kind of enthusiasm about that. So this is a powerful card because there are 4 components to this major card. One of them is illumination, one's success, one's brilliance, one is ecstasy. So they're all part of that. And when we're doing something that we really love, we're ecstatic. You know, when we were successful at something, it brings up all that joy. Like, you know, we've done something that is positive and that is uplifting. I'm going to pick a challenge card because I think it's good in this day and age that we see where the challenge lies, because it gives us a step-off point where we can grow from which we can grow. And the challenge, this card is the Four of Worlds, and it's called, see this, it says, I didn't even think about it, commencement. This is the card of starting something new. And there's an Aries ram on there. You know, there's so much Aries energy in the field right now. The eclipse was in Aries. We have Mercury retrograde in Aries. There's a lot of Aries vibration. Lots like this. It's like almost like the horse in the cage getting ready for the race. You know, all that energy is building up that wants to get released. And when this comes up as a challenge, there's the hesitation of not doing that. You know, of trying to hold on to something familiar, rather than just letting go and letting the energy move. So there's a card that helps us work with commencement, and that is the Chariot card, and the Chariot is all about movement. There's Mercury on the card, there's this runway, there's a peregrine falcon, fastest bird on the planet. This card is all about like full throttle ahead. And part of the mental part of this card says it's dullness. And dullness says, don't think, just move your energy. Like if you're feeling frustrated or you're feeling like nothing's working, get up and move. Go outside, go for a walk, go exercise, do something to move the energy in the field rather than pondering it and thinking that nothing's working. That's insanity.
It is.
And I'm going to pick one more card. It's going to tie all this crazy cards together. This is pretty amazing, these cards. And this is the Death card, and this is the card of transformation. This is the card of shedding skins. You can see the rattlesnake on this card. Time. There's the light of dawn here, meaning that after death there comes life.
Right.
And we talked about that in the beginning in the process of destruction and creation. So the image on here is the New Guinea death mask. The tribal people in New Guinea would put this mask on in their rites of initiation. And when the mask was removed, their face was different. So there's a reorganization about this card. It's like this is tying it all together, like something wants to die so something can be born. And it's a pretty powerful time for that. There are two major cards in this, you know, the Magician and Death, and they speak to each other in some profound ways.
What's interesting about your reading, Joseph, is myself and Markus, we currently have businesses. My business has been around for about 40 years, and plus I've been involved in a lot of other businesses. I'm still involved in, and Markus is as well. And we've been trying to network, trying to figure out how to get out this idea of betterment, people getting better. Okay, and this podcast is just one of those mediums. Okay, and our intention isn't for money. Our intention is to get people better, but. Good. Those cards were very interesting because when you say death, you know, destruction and birth, you say shedding of the skin, you're saying all of these different things that kind of equate to like moving forward and instead of putting that energy where we always did now. But what's funny is it's a double-edged sword though, because the double-edged sword is the things that we do now currently are the things that enable us to do the things that we're attempting to move forward with. And so those cards completely, I don't know if they did with you, Markus, but they completely made perfect sense to me about, you know, the shedding, right? The shedding, the rebirth, the death, the birth, all of those analogies that you used are a prime example, I think, of exactly where I think I'm at, and I don't mean to speak for you, Marcus, but where Marcus is at.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
definitely
kind
new
of,
beginnings, for sure.
yeah.
I would say many people are in this realm right now and
Yeah.
are ready for something different. And
Bigger,
what,
better.
yeah. When I say different, I mean something that feeds them.
Yeah.
Something that really is meaningful, it's soulful to them, that really speaks to their essence, rather than consuming information that is meaningless.
Right.
I mean, we only have certain capacity how much we can take in at any given point. So that's where exercise is really helpful too. I mean, I'm 74 now, and I have to move my energy. You know, if I don't, then I start feeling stagnant, and that's not a good place for me.
Right. Use it or lose it, right?
Use it or lose it.
Absolutely.
The only constant is change, right? I mean, there's so many things that describe that, but something in motion stays in motion. Something, you know what I mean? It's either a static or it's a motion, right? So it's so interesting how relevant a lot of these informations that we get from different areas all transform into a different perspective. Your perspective, my perspective, Marcus's perspective. Yeah. They're all different, yet they're all the same.
All the same.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the paradox.
Yep. Yeah. That's my focus. You know, after my issues I went through, is I'm going to do stuff that brings me joy. If it doesn't bring me joy, I'm not doing it anymore. You know, why? What's the point? You know,
what's the point is a really good thing, and yet we learn by that too. As I said, sometimes we have to go into the shadow in order to find the light. And
true that.
And we had that experience at the restaurant, Marcus, where that woman came up and picked a couple cards, and she had gone through some serious addictions in her time, and I think labeled herself as an addiction survivor, or that she had liberated herself from the addictions. And I suggested to her, based on the card she picked, that she had to go into that darkness. If she wanted to help people, she had to know what that darkness was, because it's the only way that you're going to compassionately connect, is having the experience yourself. And that was like enlightening for her. It was like the light bulb went off. She was like, I never thought of it that way. So you never know when enlightenment's going to come, in whatever form. Just be ready to be open to the things that come.
Absolutely.
Right. Open yourself up.
Yeah.
Joseph, thank you so much for today. We definitely got way over time, but that's okay, because we had a lot to share, and I appreciate you taking the time.
I'm very glad. I'll
put this on. Appreciate you very much.
I'll put this on. I'm going to be doing a blog after I get back to South Africa, and I'll put the link for this so people in my sphere can also tune in.
That'd be great.
That sounds wonderful, and it was great to meet you, Starman, and thank you for all your wonderful information and perspective, and we wish you nothing but the best, and hopefully I can meet you in person one day.
That would be wonderful, Don. I would like that. And Marcus, many blessings to you too, and thank you both for asking me on, and let's enjoy life.
Enjoy life. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Folks, thank you for tuning in. And if you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to our channel, like it, send some good love towards Starman, because we appreciate what he shared here. And hopefully something resonated here that touched you in a way that brings betterment into your life, brings thought that's transformative, that's going to move you forward in the direction you're looking to go. So if you liked it, share it with someone that you care about. And until next time, we'll see you on Straight Up No Bullshit. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Straight Up No Bullshit, the Dawn Handston Show. We hope we enlightened you and expanded your perspectives with our bold and honest discussions about what might be holding you back from being your genuine self. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to the next episode. If you want to know more, go to straightupnobullshit.com. We'll see you next time.